Okay, we got some breaking news from the NFL world today. So, former Indianapolis Colts head coach, former Eagles offensive coordinator Frank Reich has now been hired by the Carolina Panthers.
Somewhere along those lines. Happy
I like those
Halloween Eve.
I like those glasses, dude. They're
Tonight's
nice.
gonna be a thriller.
Have I told you I worked at the World Series? It was my first year at the stadium. I went to Fanatics Fest, I went to Comic-Con, and I went to the World Series. It was my first year at the stadium, and the Yankees made it all the way to the World Series. Unfortunately, we lost 5 games to the Dodgers.
I said the Giants will be a perfect fit for John Harbaugh because you already established the quarterback situation. You already established the running back position. You already established the right receiver position, and you have the top 5 pick in the draft.
Todd Bowles, at best, is a mediocre coach. He did the same situation with the Jets back in 2015, ultimately maliciously ruining a power-hungry Baker Mayfield and potentially Mike Evans.
But Indianapolis ultimately came back, got the go-ahead touchdown. Then, at the end of the game, when Brady got the ball less than a minute, Peyton had his head down the entire time because he knew Brady had enough time. But the interception happened. It's funny. All of a sudden, Peyton Manning hears the crowd roaring. He finally looks up and starts jumping up and down real. Hello, everybody. It is Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, football season is over and in the books. But with that being over, starts a new show, a spinoff with the same concept of pick'ems, but instead it's everything on the table with Nikki Steez and my co-host from Pick'ems, Agent Warrior X. So, Agent, glad to have you on for this journey as well.
Buenos noches, fanáticos de la Portes. Este Agent Warrior X. Today is Tuesday, February 10th, 2026. The football season is now officially in the books, and we got a lot to talk about, and this is episode 1 of the very first Everything on the Table. So today's topic is going to be about the Super Bowl halftime show. It's going to be about the Super Bowl, the NBA deadline, and of course, video games and cartoons. So, ladies and gentlemen, Nikki Steez and I would like to welcome you to the very first episode of Everything on the Table. So, kicking things off, we have the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 60 years of the Super Bowl. My perspective is say that this was the best moment Seattle has had since the Legion of Boom days. Sam Darnold is the first quarterback to win a Super Bowl in the 2018 draft class besides Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, and Josh Allen. I think this Super Bowl was by far the best. And then the Super Bowl halftime show, let's just say it was amazing. In my opinion, it was the best Super Bowl of the mid-2020s. Now, for those who don't know about Bad Bunny, he's a Latino artist, came from Puerto Rico. And during the Super Bowl halftime performance, he performed his hits. He performed his best performances. But I think the best one has to be at the end because it represents every culture of every country in the world, including America and Canada. And I think, in my opinion, this Super Bowl halftime show is by far peak culture.
Well, as far as the halftime show goes, it was unique. It was something different. We've never seen an all-Spanish halftime show before, particularly with all-Spanish music. We saw teases of it with Shakira, Jennifer Lopez, and Bad Bunny himself back in Super Bowl 54. But this is the first time we've seen him go full-on Latino music, and it was definitely something different. And Joy Reid, who is an former NBC journalist, put it best. If you don't understand all the lyrics, just dance along. You'll have a good time. And that's what some people did. But for a lot of people that are bilingual, it was probably their favorite halftime show of all time because it connected with them personally. And it was unique, though. They did a lot of they went out above and beyond, did a lot of different things. You even saw a few Latino boxing prospects. One of them, Emilio Vargas, the son of Fernando Vargas, who was a draw in that sport in the early 2000s. You also had Lady Gaga show up, which I got to say, Lady Gaga, every time she makes an appearance, you got to ask, who is that? Because she changes her look so many times. Sometimes,
I think over time, when Lady Gaga changes over time, nobody knows who she really is nowadays. But in my perspective, I think we already know who she is. She's the most popular pop artist in the 2010s. We already know that. Katy Perry was also in her prime as well. But nowadays, a lot of music artists change their appearance. Look at Jay-Z. He changed his appearance over time back in 2017. Um, you think of Kendrick Lamar. He changed his appearance ever since 2017. And you could name every artist. Now, for the culture wise, you have the best flags I could think of when it comes to culture besides Puerto Rico, America, and Canada. Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Jamaica, and Haiti, and Honduras. These are all Central American cultures, and they listen to Bad Bunny, and I completely respect it. And I may not understand the lyrics, but I will dance to the vibe to it no matter what. Heck, even Daddy Yankee made an appearance.
Yep, Gasolina.
I mean, overall, I'm gonna put Bad Bunny's halftime performance as number 6, top 10, but not top 5 or not top 3. It's still top 6.
But it's been we've seen like the Super Bowl halftime show since they got away from trying to do a lot of old school rock artists, which the thing is with them, a lot of them performed at the wrong stage in their careers where their live performance quality had declined by the time they got to the Super Bowl stage. And then you had Maroon 5 who they were an acquired taste, but they never really were for like an NFL audience necessarily. Once that bombed, they decided, all right, we need to start going with what's more with the in crowd. It started with J-Lo, Shakira, then The Weeknd, the hip hop show with Snoop Dogg, Dre, so on, and Mary J, so on and so forth. Rihanna, who still to some degree had it as far as being a draw. And here we are now. It finally comes all the way to Bad Bunny. So obviously the NFL, once that like old school, old rock acts and like pop acts didn't really appeal to football fans, died out. They went in a new direction. They've been more critically acclaimed in a positive way by the audiences since. Of course, Usher was another one too.
You know, I almost forgot to mention. You mentioned Aerosmith, right? You mentioned
Right.
Aerosmith. You mentioned Maroon 5. You mentioned Dre, Snoop, and Friends. But what you didn't mention was Prince. Prince was by far the best Super Bowl halftime show, and it's still number 2 till this day. The best one is Michael Jackson. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the Patriots. They are officially the 1996 New England Patriots. They didn't stand a chance against that Seahawks defense. Yes, people could say that this is similar to the dark side, or I call it at best Legion of Boom 2.0. Julian Love, as a Giant fan, congratulations to him. Congratulations to Leonard Williams. 2 former Giant players win a Super Bowl on that defense. But in my perspective, the Seahawks defense is Legion of Boom 2.0. Instead of the dark side, we have Legion of Boom 2.0. But considering the Patriots, the offense looked terrible from start to finish. Even if they try to cut the deficit down to 2 touchdowns, but it's not enough. The 96 Patriots back then, they didn't stand a chance against Brett Favre. Yes, Drew Bledsoe made that Patriots team a Super Bowl contender, but it wasn't by a long shot. They counted the Seahawks and Patriots out for this year. The only main focus was the Eagles and the Ravens, Bills, Chiefs, etc.
NFC, maybe the Lions. Niners were a long
Lions,
shot depending on if they stayed healthy going into the season.
Giants, in my opinion, was not talked about since that new era began. This year, however, entering 2026, I don't see them going to the Super Bowl, but I do see them having a promising season with that talent development. But I truly see them as an improvement team come 2026. And I really hope they draft the right pieces and sign key free agents and keep their players long term. Wanda Robinson is one of them. Isaiah Likely could be one of them. David Joku could be one of them. But I want to see how this plays out come free agency. And as for the Philadelphia Eagles, they still need a they still need to keep the offensive coordinator long term, as far as I'm concerned. And I feel like the NFC East at this point is wide open. The Cowboys are above average. The Commanders fell from grace, but I hope they come back healthy, stronger than ever. And as for the Eagles, they're slowly declining. They're slowly declining in terms of playoff appearances and playoff moments, but they're running out of time at this point.
Well, I'll start off with this on the Seattle Seahawks. There's couple things we can learn from the Seattle Seahawks. If you know the time is right to move on, have the guts to do it. This goes all the way back to the 2022 offseason when they, at the time, made a controversial move agreeing to trade Russell Wilson. But here's what happened in the long haul. They got future draft picks, and then they stayed relatively competitive for a couple seasons afterward. And then finally, they got a new coach. They went in a new direction. And then everything started to click. And they had Sam Darnold, who who was the right quarterback for that particular situation, which showed lesson Ravens and Bills. It's not all about the quarterback. You need a complete team. And Sam Darnold's career is perfect proof of that. Now, we've seen teams like the Ravens and Bills put everything in their quarterback, but it wasn't enough for them to win. Yeah, it got the marquee primetime games. It sold tickets and jerseys, but it hasn't helped them get to the big dance. And that's something we can learn from the Seahawks, Eagles in recent years. You got to have the right pieces on both sides of the ball in order to win the big one.
And what about the Giants? You didn't mention that. The Giants throughout the tender of the 2020s sucked, despite Dave Gettleman, despite Joe Shane making controversial moves like letting their franchise running back walk to their division rival. Since then, the Giants have been awful since 2018. And Eli Manning was on his last legs, I get that. But it's not about it's not about having a famous quarterback, a best quarterback in the league or the best team in the league. But you know what it's about? Consistency, stability, and accountability. The Cowboys lacked accountability. The Eagles sometimes lacked stability. The Giants lacked consistency. That's the thing. That's the thing when it comes to building around talent. Yes, Jalen Hurts may be young. Yes, Saquon Barkley may be still young at 27. But I think the Eagles on paper still looks a good team for years to come. But if they keep the right coordinators and pieces healthy, you still got a shot to go to the Super Bowl. The Giants are up coming in the next couple years. They hired a head coach that lacks stability, accountability, and consistency. You still got a promising rookie of Jackson Dart. You still got a promising rookie of Malik Neighbors and Cam Scottaboo. With all three of them, stay healthy, and you have a good defensive side of Abdul Carter, Douglas Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns. The Giants lack the secondary this whole season. And I'm going to say this and say the Giants will make the playoffs in 2026 if, and this is an if, they stay healthy. I'm not biased about it, but I could potentially see them go back to the playoffs.
In the Giants and Eagles, you're talking about teams in two completely different positions as of now. The Eagles, Super Bowl part, you're not really sure about. That's an iffy stretch. But as far as being in the mix in the NFC goes, that part, as long as the team stays healthy and the talent's still there, that's going to happen. Unless they go like a Norman Brayman style nuke. For those of you who don't know, he was the previous owner prior to Jeffrey Lurie. And his biggest thing that hurt him was he didn't play the free agency game. Guys like Reggie White, Keith Jackson left. Eventually, Randall Cunningham retired and then came back to Minnesota and had his best season. But the point back to the Eagles of present, they still got the talent there. Jeffrey Lurie and then Howie Roseman, the GM, are better talent-wise, so they'll at least be in the mix. The Super Bowl part, that remains to be determined. That's hit or miss. Giants, they're in rebuild mode. If you get an easy schedule, at least make a run to the playoffs, you at least have confidence going forward. Now, the thing is we learned from the Patriots, though, is not being tested against those good teams can come back to bite you like it did for them in the Super Bowl. They didn't have those tough wins against really good teams to get them ready for it. The Seahawks had 2 big wins over the Rams late in the regular season and the playoffs, and they played the 49ers, a really good team, dominated both times to build momentum, something the Patriots lacked. But a favorable regular season schedule can get you to the playoffs. But it's too early to really make predictions because we still got to see what happens with all 32 teams during the offseason. Who gets traded, leaves in free agency, who gets drafted, who makes it through training camp healthy. There's a lot going on before we can really make accurate predictions as to what's going to happen next season.
And that's exactly why I said the Giants, you mentioned the Giants are in rebuild mode, right?
Yeah.
If they get the right pieces, all they need is another receiver to complement Neighbors in case it goes down again, or try to help the secondary. But now on to the next topic I'm going to talk about, the NBA deadline. My goodness, this was a very underwhelming NBA deadline.
Yeah.
We had James Harden going to the Cavaliers. In my opinion, I don't know what's going on. I immediately a short reaction before the NFL Pickups Award ended, and then all of a sudden he got traded. Why would you trade your best? Why would you trade your young player of Darius Garland to the Clippers with Kawhi Leonard for an aging talent of James Harden with Donovan Mitchell? This is where sometimes trades don't make sense. Sometimes trades like Brooklyn getting that player from the Raptors or trading for the Nuggets. I'm actually surprised that they cut waived off Cam Thomas after the deadline.
I mean, I'll start with this as far as the underwhelming part. It reminds me of the title of a classic song by Public Enemy called Don't Believe the Hype, because there was a lot of hype, particularly about 2 players, Giannis Antetokounmpo, the former Finals MVP, and Ja Morant, one of the best young stars out in the West. There was rumors about both guys potentially getting moved, and neither happened. The Grizzlies couldn't find the right trade partner to move Ja, and the Bucks couldn't find the right partner for Giannis, which is kind of a shame because, let's face it, though, the days of these players staying loyal, we know that era is kind of passé. We know we rarely see it. So the new norm is for guys like Giannis, they stay a while, run their course, and move on. But they couldn't even find the piece to make it happen, which is probably worse in the long term. Because Giannis has already pretty much made it clear, hey, I'm not playing. So they botched that. You know who else screwed up? The Pelicans. Really screwed up by keeping the same core, not even being able to move Zion, who, if moved to a better situation, could actually produce maybe as a number 2 or number 3 guy. But you could have at least tried to find a trade partner, get some picks in return. Or even a Jordan Poole who would be better in a different situation, more as a 6th man. But they didn't move anybody.
You know what's crazy? Speaking of that Wizards trade with Anthony Davis didn't even make sense. Why did the Mavericks decided to trade their best player to the Lakers and decided to say, okay, maybe if Kyrie Irving's not coming back healthy, you can pretty much trade him to one of the worst teams in basketball. This is Nico Harrison type of level. They should have never traded Luka Doncic to the Lakers and kept Kyrie Irving long term. But in my opinion, I don't know what's going to happen throughout the second half of the season. We already know Brooklyn's not going to do anything. We already know that Diego Devin and Nola Traore is looking very promising. I know we won that game last night against the Bulls, but in my opinion, I think if the Nets get the right pick, rather it's like top 3 to like top 8, I would personally say this is by far the best pick we will ever do. Now for the other teams, we already know some teams make sense, like Jose Alvarado going to the Knicks. He's a local boy in Brooklyn going to the Knicks, which by the way, the Nets play in Brooklyn, and he went to the Knicks to help out Jalen Brunson just in case he goes down. But I think he's mostly a bench player at best. But I think that the Knicks will still continue to be contenders. Celtics, I can see the Celtics still being second despite having Jason Tatum out. Jalen Brown has been doing his part most of the time, but the number one team I'm going to talk about is the Pistons. This is this is like similar to 2004 type of season where the Nets and the Pistons were at each other, and then ultimately the Pistons pulled their biggest upset in the NBA.
And for some teams, though, like the Celtics with the Vucevic trade, that was good for Boston because they're already the number 3 seed right now in the East. You got Jalen Brown's playing his best individual basketball, and now you get Nikola Vucevic, who I thought was always overrated with the Bulls, wasn't a true number 1. Now he goes to the Celtics, a team with a number 1 and number 2. Other quality players such as Derek Brown. Who was it? Someone just escaped my mind. Derek Brown, you
Kristaps
got.
Porzingis.
Well, I think Porzingis got traded. He's now with the Hawks. Or no, he's with the Warriors now.
No, he's with the Warriors. He's with the Warriors. They're making. I think the Warriors made a big mistake by trading Jonathan Kuminga.
Peyton Pritchard, that's who it was.
Yeah, thank you.
Vucevic, who's a good role player at this point, in with those guys. All that does is add more depth come playoff time. Add a guy that can get you some rebounds, can still score from time to time when needed to. And he doesn't have the pressure of being a top guy, which he really wasn't. So it's a win for the Celtics. Now for the Bulls, you're going full-blown rebuild, but what are you getting in return if you're the Chicago Bulls? I mean, you should have done this earlier and gotten some pieces in return.
Some of these trades from the Bulls didn't even make sense to me. And I don't understand why.
And you got rid of Ayo Dosunmu. You let him go to the Timberwolves, where you just give Anthony Edwards a strong player as a supporting cast. And that was great for the T-Wolves because, hey, they get to clear a little bit of space, get a young role player to help. And we already know the T-Wolves are the team that saved their best for the playoffs. So come playoff time, they'll definitely be in contention as long as Anthony Edwards is healthy. So that was a win for the Timberwolves. And for the Pacers, Zubac could potentially be good for the future once Halliburton comes back, because you got Zubac, who's a better center than Miles Turner was. And if you get Tyrese Halliburton back healthy, you at least have hope for the future to get back into contention. That's a good move there. And for the Clippers, man, they're obviously going full-blown rebuild.
For some reason, sometimes the Clippers doesn't even make any sense when it comes to building super teams. What do they have now? A play-in tournament? The number 1 draft pick in the NBA draft? There are only how many players left on that team during the playoff tender? There are about like 6 or 5 players left on that team. And it's been less than 3 years. Kawhi Leonard might be retiring sooner than later. Ben Simmons, in my opinion, that trade made no sense. They'll get an incredible package if they choose to move on from Coffee or someone.
The Clippers, they clearly botched their championship contention window. And now this is basically them surrendering, admitting that, yeah, we're probably going to rebuild is the way I see it, because they did botch that period when they had their window to contend. And now it's coming back to bite them, and they're pretty much time to move on, because now out in the West, you have the San Antonio Spurs have reemerged. They might be the first order of the NBA pretty soon, because they've given the Thunder some problems head to head in the regular season, and they've had their numbers so far.
Speaking of San Antonio, I think the Spurs could eventually be NBA Finals contenders if they continue to not just play the Thunder almost every game, but in general stay in the playoffs for a little longer. I think Dylan Harper and Wembayama are like the dynamic duo of Tim Duncan and Tony Parker.
And this is the crazy part is, look at the depth they have. You have Wemby. You have De'Aaron Fox, who finally got free from Sacramento. And then it's not just that. You got promising Dylan Harper. You got other role players too. Devin Vessel being one of them. Julian Champagnie. You got some guys that can act. You got a whole bunch of players that can actually help. And the key we've learned from the last three finals winning teams, the Thunder, before that the Celtics, and before that the Nuggets, when they had pieces for that 2023 run, is you got to have depth to win it all.
Sometimes that's the key, which is why so far the NBA is looking very much good with the Western Conference, with the Lakers, Spurs, T Wolves, and the Thunder. Now the next topic I want to talk about is my favorite one. Baseball season is upon us. I know you don't I know you don't not a fan of baseball, but baseball season is upon us, and the World Baseball Classic is next month. Now, for this year, I'm going to say that the top 5 teams that could be contending for the World Series. We already know the Los Angeles Dodgers are the defending champs. They're looking for a 3P. We know the Padres are now slowly declining and wasting Fernando Tatis Jr.'s career. The second team I'm going to put is the Chicago Cubs. The Chicago Cubs looking like a resurgence team. Now having Alex Bregman on that team, you still got PCA, Pete Crow Armstrong. You still got Seiya Suzuki. You still got Tatsu. You got Shota Imanga, and you got some depth. That's the one thing the Chicago Cubs lacked this whole season, despite making it to the divisional round for the first time since 2016. The Chicago Cubs lack depth. The third team I'm going to mention is the Philadelphia Phillies. Is this the time to say that the Phillies should run it back again with Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, and Alec Baum? I'm gonna say yes. If the Phillies could get on track in terms of the pieces that they have, they could outlast the Braves and the Mets. Speaking of the Mets, I think the Mets at this point is starting to look like contenders again. And I think the Mets should be at number 5. Number 4, it should be the Brewers. Sure, Milwaukee may have gotten themselves back to the NLCS, but that was just a little clean sweep for Shohei Ohtani. Now, for the American League, the number 1 team should be the Yankees. Yes, they're trying to run it back with the same squad they had last year, and they got into the divisional round. Despite losing Juan Soto 2 years ago, despite losing their Devin Williams, Luke Weaver, and Paul Goldschmidt, who was signed a 1-year deal, but I think the Yankees could be the number 1 team if they stay healthy. Volpe is hurt. Carlos Rodon is hurt. Garrett Cole is hurt. He's coming back probably like around mid-May. But Aaron Judge is the true king of baseball. Yes, Shohei Ohtani is a two-way player, but Aaron Judge is the king of baseball. And I know NBC is coming back on MLB, and NBC is coming back. So I'm going to say the number 1 team is the Yankees because if they stay healthy or when they stay healthy, I see them going back to the playoffs multiple years. And I know they're trying to waste Aaron Judge's prime, but the Yankees lacked was blowing leads, blowing saves, and they lacked depth, which is why they resigned Cody Bellinger for a 5-year deal. So he's staying here for 5 more years. And you have some prospects in mind for Spencer Jones and Jason Dominguez, who started at AAA. But I think I'm going to have enough talk with the Yankees because I already know the fact that the Yankees is saying that they're favorites, but not by a long shot. The second favorite team I'm going to say for the American League is the Toronto Blue Jays. This was by far the most resurgent run I've seen in recent memory. If I remember correctly, for the Blue Jays, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is the best player. Yes, you lost IKF to the Boston Red Sox, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa to the Boston Red Sox, and you signed Dylan Cease long term, which I think his ERA is kind of bad. Toronto could be the second favorite team. The third team I'm going to mention is the Guardians. The Cleveland Guardians could be resurgence back to the playoffs and won the AL Central, but ultimately lost out to the Detroit Tigers in the playoffs. And by the way, speaking of the Tigers, they just resigned Justin Verlander back to the Tigers, which is why the Tigers are my number 3 team. I'm my number 14. And my number 15 is not the Boston Red Sox. I'm putting them as number 6, as an honorable mention. The number 5 team that could contend for the World Series is the Seattle Mariners. That core is still amazing, which is why that's my top 5 AL and NL for the upcoming baseball season. And for the predictions for the World Baseball Classic, the World Baseball Classic finals come March will be USA and Japan.
There's Agent Warrior X with your pretty brief preview of the upcoming MLB season. And while we're still on this week, I want to say about last night. Was that a full moon in the NBA world? Because it seemed like everything was out of control, man. But Isaiah Stewart, man. Look, I understand if you get in a fight, one time it happens, but when Isaiah Stewart is repeatedly doing this, I don't know. It comes across as either A, he's trying to recreate the bad boy Pistons era, or he just struggles with composure when games get heated. I mean, I know it didn't initially start with him last night, but the fact that it's the thing he gets pointed out the most is because it's happened before. Remember with LeBron James, it happened once. There was another incident. And now last night he got dragged into a fight that initially he wasn't a part of. I mean, that's the problem with repeatedly being a repeat offender, either a fighting, cheap shotting, in football, hitting after the play. Now you got the reputation as the problem, even if Jalen Duren and some other guys were involved in it.
Why does Isaiah Stewart like to get involved in fights? That's my problem with the Pistons sometimes. They like to create fights. I understand that because the bad boys era with Isaiah Thomas and
Bill Laimbeer.
Joel Embiid, Dennis Rodman. You can name every bad boy Piston era on that team, and they still like to cause fights sometimes. But I think they'll win the NBA Central. It's about time someone else wins the NBA Central.
And the thing is with that, the NBA has changed so much since the bad boy Pistons. They've gotten away from that era. The thing that particularly was the straw that broke the camel's back on the league being more strict was the Malice at the Palace, which that was part Detroit Piston fans. They played a big role in instigating that, but that was like where the NBA's came in and was like, all right, we don't want these fights to keep happening because remember Heat and Knicks in the late 90s, Ewing, Larry Johnson, particularly Larry Johnson, Alonzo Mourning, respectively.
What about Big Ben Wallace? What about Big Ben Wallace at the Indiana Pacers?
hey, that's where it all started. And then eventually the fans got involved. Eventually, the thing people remember the most was Ron Artest jumping in the stands. That was just a whole big melee that started with the players. The fans got involved, and then just all hell broke loose. They had to send the teams back to the locker room, and there were suspensions dished out across the board for both teams going forward. And that story just kept getting covered and covered and covered. And for a while, they couldn't escape the shadow of it. Ron Artest, still to this day, even though he did get to go to the Lakers and win a chip, he never truly escaped the shadow of being the guy involved in that incident.
Now let's talk about video games because I had a lot to say about when it comes to video games like this, because I know you like gaming too. I already talked about sports football video games earlier, but what about top 5 best video games of all time? Well, if you want to talk about, I'll give you my top best video games of all time. Number 5, I'm going to say for the sports gaming category, I'm going to say Madden NFL 2004. With Michael Vick on that cover, he was the most overpowered quarterback in the game. Yes, you may have the Philadelphia Eagles still in their prime with Donovan McNabb, but that wasn't enough. But I think Madden '04 is by far the best game in the EA Sports 2004 season. Number 4, this is from the fighting category, and I'm going to say Tekken 5. Tekken 5 is by far the best Tekken game in the series. You can argue say Tekken 3. You could say Tekken 7 or Tekken 6 is mediocre. But I think Tekken 5, in my opinion, is the best one in the series. And I think people say that Street Fighter nowadays is the best one over Tekken, but I think Tekken, in my opinion, is far better than that. Speaking of fighting games, here's my top 3. The third best game of all time, Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. Yes, you may say Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance is a 2002 game where Ed Boon made it the PS2 era after Mortal Kombat 4 and Gold. But I think Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance is the first game that kills off 2 main characters, Shao Kahn and Liu Kang. Those 2 were by far the greatest main characters, protagonists and antagonists in the Mortal Kombat franchise. But ultimately, I honestly feel sorry for them. Number 2 is sports and racing game. NBA Street Volume 2. NBA Street Volume 2 is my number 2 game. Because if you want to talk about best basketball games, you think of NBA Ballers, you think of NBA Live, you think of NBA 2K, like the new ones, not the new ones, but the old NBA 2K games, which Sega Sports was affiliated with them. But ultimately, NBA Street Volume 2 is by far the best game of the series. And my number 1 game, Super Smash Brothers Melee. This year celebrates 25 years of Super Smash Brothers Melee. And I kid you not, Nikki, if you are a diehard gamer or a Nintendo gamer, Super Smash Brothers Melee was the first GameCube game besides the first Smash Bros. On N64. What about your top 5? What's your top 5 favorite video games, Nikki?
I'm going to do this a little bit differently, try to give a different point of view. I'm going to start with a specific category and try to present it that way. I'm going to step outside the box of what we usually do and go top 5 Star Wars games that I played for something a little bit different.
Star Wars games. That's a really good one.
Yeah, that's something a little bit different. I'm going to go with number 5, go with the original Lego Star Wars, which was a really fun, especially at the time when I was still young. That was a really fun game where it was based around the prequels, but the fun part about it was once you beat the levels, you could just come back and do a free play
to complete to collect the stuff that you missed. But by far, the complete saga, in my opinion, was one of the few favorite Lego Star Wars games I liked. And I kid you not, it's based on the prequels and the original trilogy.
Oh,
If I had
yeah.
to choose the best Lego Star Wars original series episode, it would have to be Revenge of the Sith. It's not Attack of the Clones or the Phantom Menace. I'm gonna say the Revenge of the Sith is by far the best one.
Yeah, and that ties into number 4. It was that game. Plus, that game also had some other unique features. You could actually do a 1v1 duel or a 2v2 or a co-op. Like you could do cross era characters like Mace Windu and Luke Skywalker fighting off a bunch of stormtroopers in that game just for fun after you've unlocked all the characters. Or you could just go completely crazy and go like Qui-Gon and Anakin versus battle droids. Just do custom duels like Luke versus Darth Maul or something. And there are other
Or
games
Anakin
that allow that.
Skywalker, or Anakin Skywalker, or what's that? What Jabba the Hutt? Jabba the Hutt. You could do that.
You
I
could
don't think
even
it's
redo like the missions once you unlock all these different characters. Redo the duel in the Phantom Menace versus, like, say, with maybe Yoda and Mace Windu against Darth Maul or something like that. You could take the levels you already beat, redo them with different characters. And that used to be a fun way to twist it up a little bit. Especially sometimes I could maybe use some of the Jedi on a mission at Bespin in the Complete Saga just to mix up the rotation a little bit. And then you also got number 3 was kind of an interesting one. Kind of an underrated gem, Jedi Starfighter. Now, it was based on Attack of the... Actually, no, that would be more of an honorable mention. Number 3, I'm going to go with Knights of the Old Republic.
That's
that
a good
was a
one.
customization one where you could just pick your character and pretty much play your own path. You could either make decisions that a light side character would make and be on the light side, or you could just be completely evil and be a Sith Lord in that game. It was entirely up to you. You could even do 2 separate saves on that. Do one where you go on the light side, one where you go on the dark side, just to see both paths and see how it plays out throughout the game.
Speaking of the Star Wars Republic game, there's a new Star Wars Republic game coming out, which I heard about Gaming Awards.
That would be interesting for sure. And then another one you had was the Jedi Academy one, which that was a fun one too. You had Luke Skywalker, it was basically you were one of Luke's students was your character in the game. You went through all these missions. It was kind of set post-original trilogy. It was based around Luke starting the new Jedi Order, which is something the sequels missed out in terms of storyline writing. They should have incorporated that aspect into the game. They could have either done flashback scenes in The Force Awakens to hint at the idea that Luke restarted the Order or something, and they just completely missed that. But this game did a much better job depicting that than the sequels did. What happened when the Jedi did make their return post Episode 6.
I never ever want to hear anything good about the sequel trilogy ever again. They botched The Last Jedi, and they made Rise of Skywalker a bit more mediocre than that. I'd rather see Avengers Endgame better than that.
At this point, you could just do an animated reboot at any point, either the prequels or the original trilogy, and probably have that be better storyline-wise than the sequels. But number 1, this kind of ties into that. That's the original Battlefront 2 for PS2 and the original Xbox. That was a lot of fun.
Don't get me wrong. I like the new one too, but the old one was by far the best one. And I think Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2 are by far the best ones, best games I've ever played as a kid. Now, if you want to talk about the next thing I want to talk about, top 5 is top 5 GOATs in sports. If you want to talk about now, a lot of people debating who's the best player under sport. Well, for each respective leagues, here are my top 5 best players from football to baseball. The number 5, I'm going to say, for best player of all time, I'm going to say Tom Brady. I'm sorry. I know he's the GOAT in football because he has 7 championships. But Tom Brady, in my opinion, is the GOAT in football because he dominated every single league, every single team in every time the Patriots played this team, every time the Patriots win a championship, every time Bill Belichick coached Tom Brady to become the best. But there was one team that could stop them: the Giants. No, it's not the Eagles because of that 2017 backup run with Nick Foles. That still counts though. But the Giants were the true king slayers. Number four, the number four best player for basketball is Michael Jordan, not LeBron James. Michael Jordan is the best player in basketball. I do not care what anybody says about, oh, LeBron James is the GOAT because you're doing this since 25 years. But to tell you the truth, in the 90s belonged to the Bulls, specifically the big three of Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman. They ruled the 90s. They ruled the, the East, and they ruled against the Supersonics, which, by the way, I'm hearing NBA is bringing back the Supersonics as an expansion team and Las Vegas as a new team. And the best way to top it all off is that he's a Hall of Famer. Number three, the best player on baseball is Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter, since '96, has been playing amazing throughout his career and won multiple championships. You can argue and say that he was bad at shortstop, but that's a completely different story. But you know what's familiar between Derek Jeter getting to the Hall of Fame? Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick didn't get into the Hall of Fame because a lot of people didn't vote for him as the best coach because of the cheating scandals. And Derek Jeter got in, but one specific vote said no. We already know Derek Jeter's the best. We already know Mo is the greatest. But the true legend, the true GOAT is Derek Jeter. Number two, the second best GOAT in this is for football, by the way. The second best GOAT is not Jalen Hurts, not Jackson Dart, and it's not Jaden Daniels. The second best GOAT, Lawrence Taylor for the New York Giants. The best way to describe Lawrence Taylor is officially the greatest defender of all time from the 80s and the 90s. Lawrence Taylor is one of the best defenders since Ray Lewis, Aaron Donald, Ed Reed, Reggie White. You can name every defender part of that team, part of those respective teams, but Lawrence Taylor is the greatest player of all time in my top five. And my number one, no, it's not Eli Manning. No, it's not Aaron Judge. The true GOAT is football. And I'm talking about Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi is the greatest football player of all time. I don't care if CR7 is in that category. I know that. But Lionel Messi, since his career in Barca, has been doing a lot of things, especially giving one specific gift for Lamine Yamal when he was younger. That bat that he gave Lamine Yamal when he was a kid. And I kid you not, Nikki, Lionel Messi is the greatest football player of all time. He won multiple La Ligas. He won multiple Champions Leagues. He on multiple occasions. Yes, Cristiano Ronaldo may have won multiple Champions Leagues on multiple different occasions, but Lionel Messi is by far the best player of all time because he won the World Cup. I mentioned he won the League One championship. He won the La Liga, and now on his resume, when he retires, he'll become a future icon, joining Diego Armando Maradona, God bless the dead, for both him and Pele. Which is why my top five is Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, Derek Jeter, Lawrence Taylor, Lionel Messi. What's your top five?
For top 5, it's like I'm going to have to go based on kind of on star power too. So I'm going to even incorporate, so it's going to be a little bit of prowess and star power too. And if you're talking like Lionel Messi is such a big cult name that even people that don't follow soccer or that may know a little bit about, they know who Messi is. He's the main name. He even has a few sandwiches named after him too. So he's such a huge international star. That plays a big role as well too, as being one of the GOATs of sports all time. Go with him as a possible number 5. Another guy, now this is going to step outside the box a little bit. After that, you're going to go with a guy in, you could say Derek Jeter too, just for the name recognition as well. I mean, but then after that, I'm going to step outside the box and go Muhammad Ali, because he was both a great at his sport, but he was also the biggest name of the 20th century in sports, period. Even bigger than Michael Jordan, with all due respect. With all due respect, bigger than Wayne Gretzky, Joe Montana, Babe Ruth, guys who were considered some of the hugest names of that time. He was also a bit of a political activist during a time period, important time period with the civil rights movement. He's remembered for being on the right side of history. Even when he wasn't popular at the time, he stuck by what he believed. And years later, people realized he was on the right side of history. He became more beloved.
You talk about Colin Kaepernick, right?
I mean, as years go along, he will be. But Muhammad Ali stands out more because he was also phenomenal at boxing, too. And he was the biggest draw at
a
one
lot of
point.
people, when you want to talk about best boxers, you think of Muhammad Ali, you think of George Foreman, you think of Joe Frazier, you think of Mike Tyson, you think of Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, Logan Paul, Jake Paul, etc. But Muhammad Ali is forever the GOAT in boxing.
That's a tough subject, too, because, boxing, you kind of got to go by weight classes, too, because you go different weight class, like middleweight, Sugar Ray Robinson comes up, Marvin Hagler, like
cruiserweight, light heavyweight. You can name every category. Oh yeah, Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather. Those are two light heavyweight and cruiserweight. I'm assuming.
Those are more, I guess they're more the multi-weight class world champion category. Sugar Ray Leonard would be another one. Those guys fit into that category. Oscar De La Hoya fit into like the multi-weight class world champion GOAT categories. But that's an interesting, but Muhammad Ali also just because of the name recognition too. And he was a pro wrestling fan too. And he borrowed from that, that was the way he built up his fights and made his press conferences entertaining too, which drew people to watch.
Pro wrestling nowadays is just about AEW, TNA, NXT, and WWE, which, by the way, I did a podcast with a few members of the Hardcore Sports Network. One of them talked about a wrestling Mount Rushmore of wrestling. One of them being Hulk Hogan, God bless the dead for him. John Cena, he's also the GOAT, 17-time world champion. Now he's a Grand Slam champion because very recently he won the Intercontinental champion. He won the Tag Team champion. He won the United States Championship. He won the World Heavyweight Championship, and now he won the WWE Championship on multiple occasions.
That's a thing, though, and it lost its mainstream appeal though over the years. I mean, you still get your flashes here and there, but it doesn't have the same mainstream spark it once had. I guess it just kind of, after that second boom period, it just kind of slowly. It kind of ran its course. It ran out of ideas. And I guess over time, fan interest started to slowly dip. But Muhammad Ali itself, though, oh my gosh. I mean, one of the biggest names. Then you go now to number two. I'm going to go NFL and say Tom Brady. And the reason I put that as number 2 is because spoiler alert, number 1, Michael Jordan basketball, because basketball is a bigger sport globally. That's why I put that number 1. because of the global recognition a guy like a Michael Jordan gets. So that's another factor too. He's recognized all across the world, whereas Tom Brady in the United States, people know he is. Canada, they'll still know he is. But you go to Europe, he's not going to have as big, he's not going to be as recognizable in Europe as he is in North America. But you send Michael Jordan to Europe, they'll know who he is.
Yep. Who's your number one?
That's why I got Michael Jordan.
Oh, that's right. And to be honest with you, when it comes to anime and cartoons is one of the most games everybody loved as a kid. You think of great ones back in the days like Looney Tunes or Tom and Jerry or Rugrats, SpongeBob. You can name every cartoon that you love the most. But the best anime cartoons, whatever you talk about, here are my top three best cartoons of all time. No, yes, Looney Tunes is part of it. It's part of my top three, but not by a long shot. So I'll put that as an honorable mention. Number three, the best cartoon I ever watched as a kid, the original Teen Titans. Teen Titans was by far the greatest Cartoon Network show until 2000, around 2007 or 2006, because they didn't have to cancel, they didn't have to leave it in a cliffhanger. Yes, I already know Teen Titans is one of the greatest cartoons I watched as a kid, but I really hope they, either Adult Swim or eventually Toonami can bring it back. Look what happened with Samurai Jack. And by the way, Samurai Jack is number two because Samurai Jack is by far the best Cartoon Network show of all time. Yes, it has. Yes, it has Jack hunting down a coup and every other enemies he fought, but Samurai Jack is by far the greatest Cartoon Network show of all time, which is why number one, it's a two-way tie for cartoons. Naruto and Dragon Ball Z. Yes, they're both anime, but they count as cartoons as well. But Dragon Ball Z, it went on from 96 all the way to like 2001. But I think Dragon Ball Z, people say pretty much say that Dragon Ball Z can outlast Naruto, but in my perspective, Naruto is my second is 1A. Naruto's my number 1A and Dragon Ball Z is 1B because Naruto had so many seasons. Yes, you have Shippuden, you have the original one, and yes, you saw it in my introduction. You saw me wearing a Akatsuki gear. Why do you think that red cloud was behind me? Was behind me the whole time during the NFL Pick'ems? You want to know why, Nikki?
Go for it.
Because Akatsuki stands for red cloud, means red cloud. Because since I'm a diehard anime fan, and I can name you at least 3 or 4 Akatsuki members: Itachi Uchiha, Deidara, Kisame, Pain. These are the members that are my top 4 Akatsuki members, and I know Akatsuki is one of the most beloved clans in Naruto Shippuden. But in my perspective, I think One Piece is in that category, but I go with Naruto in my opinion. So that's my top 3 cartoons and anime. Top 3 best cartoons and anime. The floor is yours for best anime and cartoons, Nikki.
I'm just going to go outside the box in this one. And there's one you didn't mention that it was a little bit before our time, but it was still accessible, and that's Batman. The series.
You know what? You're talking about Batman, the animated series, right?
Yeah.
God bless the dead for Kevin Conroy because he's one of the greatest actors who played it. I wanted to meet Kevin Conroy at Comic-Con, but before he passed away. But Batman, the animated series, in my opinion, is by far the best Batman cartoon of all time. You can argue and say Batman Beyond or the Batman, not the movie, but the one in 2004. But in my opinion, Batman, the animated series, is by far the best one.
And that was such a great series that it eventually paved way for one of the best superhero movies, if not the best superhero movie of all time. 2008, The Dark Knight, starring Christian Bale and Heath Ledger. What a great film, but also in Heath Ledger's case, what could have been had he still been around after that movie got released to DVD. Oh my gosh, because that was such a great performance. He could have really ran off with a great career after that. But unfortunately, we didn't ever got to see a follow-up.
Which is why I think the best Dark Knight movie has to be Dark Knight, the Dark Knight, the the second movie, Dark Batman Begins. You have the Dark Knight, the Dark Knight Rises. Sorry, your number two best cartoon.
I mean, Jesus. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, for me, I gotta think for a second. I mean,
Take your time, bro.
I gotta go back to the archive a little bit. And for this one, it's kind of just more of a, hey, this is what I like, so I'm kind of just gonna accept it as what it is. So as I get older, I guess you got that one.
You mentioned Batman animated series. What's your number two?
I mean, you had Samurai Jack at the time.
Yep, I watched all the seasons.
I
watch all the seasons. You should watch all the seasons too.
Speaking of Batman, there's a tie-in too. Another one that.
Let me take a wild guess. It's between Justice League the animated series and Superman the animated series.
It's Justice League.
Yep, I knew it. I knew it because during the animated series, it was peak. Besides the animated series, before you had Batman Beyond, Justice League animated series was another good one, and Superman the animated series was also a great one too.
And in fact, I just thought about it to another comment about The Dark Knight. Heath Ledger's Joker kind of still inspirational. You've seen like the How It Should Have Ended in the Adult Swim, how they took with Star Wars, made the Emperor more of a Joker type of villain in those anime spoofs of it, instead of a serious psychopath, like How It Should Have Ended over Into the Zim, where he's like, I'm going to ask this question only once. And then the guy, there's an even larger exhaust where he's like, oh, good, wait, what? There's one example.
My God. You know what's crazy though? Despite the fact that Robot Chicken is another good cartoon, but it's like adult humor type. But we're talking about OG cartoons that we grew up as kids. But if you want to talk about best Joker, we'll save that for another time. Now, what's your number one?
I already said it was the Batman one. I went backward order.
Oh yeah,
I went backward order from 1 to 3. So
to be honest with you, I think when it comes to best superhero cartoons, you think of Batman, you think of Superman, you think of the Justice League. You did not mention Marvel. You didn't mention Spider-Man. You didn't mention the Avengers. You didn't mention Fantastic Four. You didn't mention none of that. What about the X-Men? You didn't mention that either. But the X-Men animated series was by far the best one. Now, I met the voice actor who played as Wolverine. And no, it's not Hugh Jackman. Cal Dodd, the same voice actor who played as, I forgot who he was in Goosebumps, but I'll say that for another time. But I know this much. Cal Dodd is the best Wolverine in the X-Men animated series.
I mean, for you, that's more your specialty because you're a little bit younger than me, so you got to see more of the anime and cartoons. I started to get a little bit older. I started to lean more towards sports and TV sitcoms like Two and a Half Men. Once I was old enough to understand some of it, but looking back on it now, it's the perfect, hilarious, edgy sitcom.
To be honest with you, every TV show, sitcom, sports, video games, anime, cartoons, whatever you think of, looking at back then was pure nostalgic. Specifically the 90s and early 2000s. The 90s and 2000s was peak gaming, peak sports, not because of Michael Jordan in the 90s, but specifically baseball, where the Yankees were the true kings of the dynasty. And specifically in the early 2000s when the Lakers became a dynasty, the Yankees finished their three-peat. And for best cartoons and anime, Naruto kicked in while One Piece was still in. But I think, Nikki, in my opinion, this is by far the greatest era. The 90s and the early 2000s was by far peak gaming, peak sports, and peak cartoons and anime. Thank you guys for watching. This is the very first episode of Everything on the Table. There's going to be more stuff to it for weeks to come. Until next time, goodbye, my friends. This is Agent Warrior X. Good night, everyone.
And for Nikki Steez, the host of the show, thank you guys for tuning in. We hope to catch you next week. We'll have some more to talk about. We'll be getting closer to the NFL draft combines, free agency. Well, NBA season is going to start picking up a little bit more. So we'll see what happens. And then into March, you also got March Madness. So stay tuned because we're going to have a lot to talk about in the coming episodes.